Hello, I'm James Simister, and I want to talk about the Anglo Saxon era and why it's so important in English history. The Anglo Saxon period was over 600 years, which is like going back from the early 21st century right back to Henry V and Agincourt. It's a very long period. Probably heard of the Sutton Hoo helmet or the Staffordshire hoard that was discovered a few years ago. May have heard of the Lindisfarne Gospels or Offa's Dyke, but there's so much in Anglo-Saxon England that isn't really taught in school. I think people have heard of King Alfred burning the cakes when he was in exile in the marshes of Athelney, but there's much more to it than that. Originally, after the end of the Roman Empire, there were lots of settlements by Angles, Saxons and Jutes from across the North Sea, and a number of small kingdoms were formed. And gradually the larger kingdoms like Northumbria, Mercia in the Midlands, East Anglia and Wessex in the south took over these smaller kingdoms. Now some people may have seen the TV series The Last Kingdom, and that shows you how Alfred the Great, having been almost completely defeated by the Danish invasions, was able to come back and gradually establish a kingdom of the English, which then in due course became the Kingdom of England. Before Alfred's time, there had been all these small kingdoms, all warring with each other, deadly rivals, but it was only the threat of the Vikings and Danes that made the remaining English kingdoms come together under Alfred's leadership. And that's why the Kingdom of England is based in the south, because it was Wessex that led the fight back against the Danish and Viking invasions. The other kingdoms, East Anglia, Northumbria, and even Mercia, were overrun, half of Mercia anyway, by the Vikings or Danes. I say Vikings or Danes because in those days the terms Norse, Viking, Dane were really interchangeable. When we look back at this huge period of 6 centuries, so much to admire. The metalwork and technology of the Sutton Hoo helmet or the Staffordshire hoard. There are great achievements like Offa's Dyke. King Offa was a great king of Mercia, and he built an earthwork over 100 miles long, and lots of it you can still see, dividing Mercia, which was the great Midland kingdom, from the Welsh principalities or various petty kingdoms in Wales at that time. King Alfred created a navy. He built fortified boroughs all over England to defend the country against the Vikings and Danes. He also created the modern state in terms of efficient taxation, rotation of manpower for the armies. Alfred developed the coinage, new law codes. He worked out the whole resources of the country so that he could tax it more efficiently. Originally, the Danegeld was meant to be a tax which was going to be used to build ships and pay soldiers, but sometimes it was just easier and more convenient just to use the money to pay the Danes or Vikings or Norse to go away. And that's why there are still occasionally huge hoards of Anglo-Saxon coins found in Scandinavia, because they took all this money away with them, but actually they were unable to use it. So this is the period, the Anglo-Saxon period, particularly the later part of the Anglo-Saxons, when England comes together as a nation and also as a state, one of the most advanced states in Europe at the time in terms of its administration, in terms of its technology, its ability to fight wars and defend itself from invasion. Of course, that did actually fall apart later on, which is why King Canute was able to conquer England 50 years before the Norman conquest. We had a Danish conquest, but King Canute, who also ruled over Norway and Denmark, sort of took over England as a going concern and didn't change very much, whereas the Norman conquest, of course, changed pretty well everything and is normally seen as being the end of Anglo-Saxon England. If you like Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings, then that will give you some idea of the sort of politics and intrigue that was going on between these Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. But of course the most vivid picture of all is in the great epic poem Beowulf, which is the first great European poem of its kind, which gives a vivid picture of life in the court of a great warlord king. It's one of the most remarkable poems in any European language, and if you want to get a version of it, Seamus Heaney's version, he translated the poem himself and then recorded it on CD, is a brilliant evocation of that world. Thank you very much.